Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. I can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you gotta get spotted. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun. Good morning, everybody. It is the 9th of July, and I think today is a pretty important day for the Bears here. So far, it doesn't look good for them, by the way. So what am I talking about? Well, there's a couple of bear case scenarios that kind of come to a head today. One of them is there was a note from, I think it was JP Morgan, one of those analyst guys, and they were saying that coronavirus cases and hospitalizations should peak this week earlier. So what we should see as a leveling off or even decrease in new cases and hospitalizations today. Also, we got these jobs numbers, and there's some indications that we actually started to lose some jobs in since the later half of June, and I think we should start to see a little bit of that in the numbers today. So, if we don't start seeing those things turn out, I think, and we end this week higher from here. Especially if we were to get up to the 3,200 area, I think that would be very devastating to the bear case. So let's come in and look at the charts. The market is still somewhat constrained coming in here in the volume profile. Yesterday, again, we had, while we're still reeling from Tuesday, had a bit of back and forth, actually had a really positive run at the beginning of the day, and I really thought that we were going to come up to this point of control, but it got short-circuited by a couple of things, among which one of them was some a release from the Global Times, which is the Chinese newspaper, looking like, they were kind of all ready to go full-out financial war with Hong Kong, and that they weren't really worried about what the United States might do. But then in the end, on the close, tech in particular moved us back up to here, and now we're kind of rotating around that, but not pushing up further yet. We need some news there. In the treasuries, we had an auction in the 10-year, pretty strong auction in the 10-year, and you can see the rise up there off of the auction, but something is definitely weighing the treasuries down, and the bullishness in the equities is probably a good indicator, or a good reason for perhaps why. Also, we should talk about gold. Gold was pretty bullish yesterday, although giving up some of the gains today. I think there are some issues with gold. Like, it just, I don't know, over time, it's definitely going up, but they seem to have a hard time keeping their gains. Like, you have a good run and it'll come back very quickly. So there's some mess going on over there. Oil's still kind of in the range. So then if we come back out here, we'll look at some of our currency movements. So you can see there's the gold coming down. The dollar index still kind of around 96.28. Still pretty low. Yesterday, that big move up in the euro looks to be holding so far. So Japanese yen not doing a whole lot of anything today. So we'll come back over here, and let's go into some of the news that we're looking. So we're going to get initial jobless claims, and we're looking for a reading of 1,375,000 versus a previous of 1,427,000. So if if we end up being higher than that number, then that could be an indication that we're getting, that second wave of unemployment that bears have been warning about. So again, that jobless numbers, I'm going to be watching it very, very carefully. Continuing jobless claims, 1 million. Oh, sorry, 18,950,000. Jeez, that's the expectation. We also got wholesale inventories today, looking for a reading of -1.2. Okay. Let's see here, Kenny. The U.S. government injected 1.6 billion in Novavax. Oh wow, doing that with corporate bonds or with just from buying it or giving them a loan? I know that they were awarded the vaccine, so they're going to be giving them a ton of money because they want a lot of it, right? Mm. And Berkshire now owns 91 billion of Apple stocks. Wow, wow. Following Berkshire's moves is kind of interesting. They have had a little bit of movement here. I'm not a little vague on the specifics here, but Mm-mm. Okay. Get my Texas speech going here. All right. Okay, so we got about 30 seconds for the news here. Let's make sure I got the correct accounts here. I do want to take a serious trade here, so. Watch it come out, it'd be good. I can, I think that there's a way more downside available to this if it's bad, but. Okay. So not a whole lot of movement off of that. I guess the number may be a little bit late. So moving up there. Cancel that since we didn't get a sweep down. Okay, so the number was close. 1,314,000 versus 1,375,000. So a little bit under expectation. And then the continuing claims were 18,062 versus an expected 18,950,000. So the continuing claims is actually better than expected too. This is very marginal. I think that that should be enough that we could continue moving up. It's not going to cause like a huge move. I'm not 100% sure if 3169 is really the place that I want to take it because there could be a little bit of angling around here. They might dump on you first. Okay. I did see the treasuries move down a little bit there. Only by like a tick. Hmm. Mm, let's see here. Oh, yeah. Oh, we should talk about this, but I need to go grab something really quick. I'll be right back. Not much of a reaction. It's kind of interesting. Zero Hedge tweets, almost 50 million Americans have now filed for first-time jobless benefits since lockdowns began.
Kenny Desmet says, shares of Novavax, Inc. NVAX,
Oh, yeah.
free report jumped 31.6%.
They were up pretty big
Kenny
yesterday.
Desmet says the company was awarded $1.6 billion by the federal government to support the late-stage development of its coronavirus vaccine.
That sounds like stock pumping to me, Kenny. So Igor is long the treasuries. Interesting. I'm not sure. Well, we got 30-year bond auction today. And I should note that we do have a change in the liquidity over in the bonds, right? For one thing, we got these big old orders at 25 and 05. And this is an algorithm that used to be really, really common in ZB, and we used to have it on
says, I saw
all of the
AZH article
treasuries.
about how like 38% of Americans are now depending solely on the US government for income.
Right. But I don't know if those numbers are really like there's a bunch of different ways to kind of come to a conclusion about how much that is, and I don't know. The thing that's kind of a little bit crazy about it is that it doesn't look like people
Winston
are at
Small says, will you
all.
send the children back to school in the fall? I am glad I don't have to make this
Yeah.
decision.
It doesn't look like people are at all anxious to end this. I view this as a problem because we are taking some pain here. Let's say, like when you look at what the public health policy should
Uzi
be.
Knesset says, bro, I collected the unemployment for a few weeks and I'll tell you this, the way they're distributing it is a fucking mess. I wouldn't doubt at all if all these numbers are horribly incorrect.
Yeah, totally. But I'm sure that it's a lot, right? But the thing is like what the analysis that we need to do to determine the correct public health policy is a very complicated, multifaceted analysis. And the majority of the public wants to do this analysis
Uzi
on
Knesset
one
says, oh,
metric.
for sure, I'd wager they're significantly higher.
They want to do it all on one metric. So you get these people that say, well, we should keep things shut down until there's a vaccine, for instance, right? And the way that people are talking right now, especially in the political sphere, the people that are pro lockdown, let's say, are basically talking that like that's what it's going to be, is we're just going to be locked down completely until there's a vaccine, which is not really very realistic, is it? But the problem is that because we're putting so much government money out there, not just through unemployment, but also all of the buying corporate bonds and the way that the markets have pumped up because of the support from the Federal Reserve, we really haven't had to face the consequences of the lockdown on other facets of our lives. The one place that we have had to experience it is people can't go to church. So that's one thing where people that go to church are starting to get a little bit upset. Here in Utah, they're actually starting to have church again. But I think that when we eventually have to give up the unemployment benefits, it's going to be a big shock to people. And here again, if we don't start seeing a decline in cases next week, as JP Morgan suggests, then where do you go from there, right? Because then it turns into, we'll have rising case counts and filled ICUs for the near future, and we're going to have to continue
Uzi
to
Knesset
take
says
on
the
more
reaction
debt.
to COVID sets about as perfect of a foundation for communist authoritarianism as one could ever wish for.
As one could ever wish for. That's funny. So, yeah. So on the kids going back to school, like, this is one of those things where I say I think the analysis is more complicated than just, will more people die? I know that that seems like really weird and wrong, but it really is, okay? How many more people will die from taking the kids back to school than not? And I believe that it will increase anything that you do that increases the transmission of the coronavirus. It could potentially harm lives, but it seems like that the kids don't really get hurt by it. So it's not going to kill the kids. And probably most of the teachers, unless they're really old. Okay, but it could spread it.
Uzi Knesset says, but
Those
remember,
people in
God
nursing
forbid we just
homes.
dump trillions of dollars into expanding healthcare. 1.1 million total available beds for 330 million people. Seems legit.
Yeah. So, and then you got to think about the impact on the kids, and all of these adults. Like, people need to start getting back to work. I don't know if they're gonna extend the unemployment benefits, past July. I haven't been seeing anything on in politics about bills to fix that. So is it just going to come off in July, and then those people will have to go back to work, and they can't do that if their kids aren't going to school, right? So it's not such a simple thing. And then you got to think about the impact on the kids' lives. Like, some of the things that they're suggesting that you need to do for the kids to go back to school, you know, wearing masks all day. They want, like, these barriers in between all the kids and all this stuff. There's no do these people that are suggesting these things not have kids? Because there's no way my kids aren't going to wear masks all day. No way. They'll last about 30 minutes. They'll want to take them off. I mean, come on. Come on. What is the impact on the kids and the impact on their psyche, and the cultural impact on our society in the long run when you do these sorts of things, right? Those are things that we have to consider too. So, but here's the other side of it, is that, again, there is a good case to be made that we will start to see a decrease in cases, that it was those places that opened up early that were kind of have a rising, and that most other places won't see the same kinds of rises because they're opening up more slowly. Ergo, the number rise in cases in the United States is about to decline. I think that they have an okay argument. If that really is happening, then in 2 months from now, when it's time to go back to school, it's not going to be an issue, right? And at that point, it would be almost silly to not send the kids back to school. So I think it's a multifaceted analysis, but I think that the last ditch, like, final decision uh, point is not here yet. We could wait a couple of weeks and we'll have a lot more data, and we'll be able to say a lot more about what the real risk is. You know what I mean? It's a little warm in here. Is there something wrong with my AC? Igor says a mask helps decrease transmission, but agrarians want us to wear it as it hides individuality. My weird randish thought. So you think that So because I really haven't understood the case from people that are like super
Winston's mom says I
anti-mask.
agree, it's too early to know.
People that are super anti-mask, I don't completely understand it, to be honest. But Igor says because it hides individuality. Well, maybe. My family are all doctors and surgeons, and mask helps. Well, the bonds did go bit. So I'm wondering, Igor, why you went long the bonds at 06 half, because I mean, I definitely saw the uptick and everything else like that, but I'm not sure that I know what the base case here is for it to move up. Trading Floor Audio UK to announce further measures to reopen UK economy later today. UK Prime Minister Johnson's spokesman, Culture Minister Dowden, to set out next phase of reopening of UK economy later on Thursday. LLRAM, we are moving in the right direction, but the absolute numbers remain high, and that is of concern because we are getting now a migration up in layoffs for the smaller companies to the larger ones. Yes. And do we come to a point where there starts to be earnings revisions again? Right. I look at this in three facets: unemployment, earnings, virus case numbers, right? And that really comes into,
Uzi Knesset says, why aren't my comments coming through?
are they not all coming through? I do see this one about, remember, God forbid we just dump trillions of dollars into expanding healthcare. 1.1 million of total wide beds and 330 million people seems legit. No, that was everything. I don't know. I don't know. That comment came through. Maybe you're just, maybe, I don't know. There's some new options here in YouTube that I'm not familiar with. Enable auto start and auto stop. That must be for me to, like, when the stream starts.
Uzi Knesset says, my comment included a certain phrase that doesn't come through.
Oh, I see. Were you swearing, Uzi?
Uzi Knesset says, that's crazy, a phrase about the world being beclowned.
Oh.
Winston's mom says Uzi Knesset I'd live chat enabled. Try refreshing the page.
Or did you say like Clown World or something like that? Trying
Uzi
my
Knesset
best while
says,
now
yes.
funds are breaking out. Is everyone stuck short with the strong stock market? Okay.
Uzi Knesset says that phrase is banned in chat.
Yeah, YouTube is freaking weird with that kind of shit. The things that the algorithm picks up on. I think that's one that the algorithm picked up on, and then they left. Okay, so the E-mini is higher, but it's been super slow. Crazy slow. Rabobank says central banks need the grannies to dive
Uzi
into
Knesset
stocks.
says, my comment was about how build more hospitals sounds crazier than collapse the economy by putting everyone on house arrest forever.
Build more hospitals. Well, that's an interesting thing, though. It's like, what are the economics of building more hospitals? This sounds like Houston needs more hospitals. Why is nobody talking about building a new hospital over there? That would be one of the things, if I was mayor, I would be, okay, we need another hospital, apparently. Well, let's get working. Let's start
Uzi Knesset
incentivizing
says, and I
people to
said,
do it.
how to tell you live in C Tarankan 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 N world?
Well, I don't know. It does make you wonder if it was a different president, how people would view things differently, because there's no question about it that it affects the way that people see things. No question about it. One of the things that I find interesting is with the right and some of the kind of conspiracy theory stuff, like that masks really don't help, and that the only reason that the government wants you to wear them is because it gets rid of individuality, or it infringes upon our rights, or whatever the deal is, right? They're saying all that even when, like, the Trump administration is kind of saying, like, oh, we should wear masks, is just really, really interesting. Oh, because Win put a star at the beginning of her sentence, it didn't read that out? Oh, that's interesting.
Uzi Knesset says yes.
Yeah, I guess if you put a star at the beginning,
Kenny
it's
Desmet
not.
says, what are your thoughts on a market crash?
Well, at the moment, I think that, like, a full-on crash is pretty unlikely. Uh, just because there's so much debt out there. Oh, look at the way that the treasuries came back there. That was really fast. Let's see here. What's the next kind of spot over here in the E-mini 74? I don't know. The markets have been so slow the whole week. And now we get the news. It's still really slow. I'm not sure at the moment that I see a good reason for me to move, but I am kind of suspecting maybe it's a sell in the treasury now. There is that big old order at 05. I'm not so sure that that makes this area a great spot. Well, I guess if you could sell 06. Anyways, but the thing is that the market does appear to be overvalued here. And in order for these valuations to hold up, you're going to have a bunch of earnings revisions, right? Like, earnings are going to have to come through and be a lot better than people are expecting. And I think the concern when you start to get into earnings seasons, as Igar was saying to us yesterday, you know, that if they come in and start revising things down, the market could come down, and they could come down very fast. I don't know if that would be considered like another crash, but there could definitely be a
Winston's
repricing.
mom says, what's next? Well, I am going to ask everyone to please hit like. Thanks, thumbs up.
Thanks. By the way, I haven't been focusing too much on the likes lately, but you guys have been doing a great job. We've been getting like 20 almost every day, and the channel is the number of views that the individual videos are getting is going up again. So it really does help, guys. I appreciate it a lot. Oh, speaking of which, we should see how our video that we posted yesterday about implied volatility is doing.
Uzi Knesset says I can't believe such a benign phrase is actually banned by YouTube lol.
I know, right?
Kenny Desmet says the thing is, the Fed has been pumping a lot of money in the market though, and I don't think that it will keep on going like that.
Well, they've been pulling back for sure. You see the comment yesterday? It was it was tweeted out by CNBC, like a quote from the head of the trading desk at the Federal Reserve, saying that if things keep going like this, that the Federal Reserve won't have to put any money at work, and they haven't been putting as much. Haven't been buying as many treasuries as they have been. It's decreased a lot, and it continues to decrease. And look at the liquidity in the treasuries. We got these big old orders in the ZBA back again, probably because we have the auction today. But then we're starting to get multiple prices over 3,000 or close to it in the 10-year. Like, the liquidity has definitely improved and come back. So it looks like that it's working and that the liquidity is coming back. And if it does and it stays there, then the Federal Reserve is saying that the reason they're pumping the money in is to have efficient functioning of markets. In other words, so that there's liquidity. If it continues, then it's right. They're going to take it out. And what's the impact on asset prices? Because the Federal Reserve claims that they don't look at the asset price. I don't know. And really, since they started decreasing since mid June, yeah, market has kind of been coming back, hasn't it? So let's see here. We do have some comments on that video. No, that's not true. AP. Mm-hmm. Mm-mm-mm-mm. There's this guy is arguing with me on a video now. You want to hear? You want to hear what he said? Wait, I'll go deeper into it. So he asks, how can the delta in Jigsaw and Ninja be different? Compare the low on both platforms. On Jigsaw it's lower, but on Ninja it's higher. How can this be? So I told him, when the software receives the orders, the data provider doesn't tell you anything about whether those market orders are buys or sells. We're just told the price that the market order executed at. And then you have to use what was the current best bid and ask to determine whether the order was a buy or a sell. So if the level 2 and the market fills are out of sync, which can certainly happen when prices moving up and down really quickly, even a few milliseconds could make a difference as to whether an order is considered a buy or a sell. And so you can get these small discrepancies between the cumulative deltas between platforms or between machines. So I know this because we literally go through and watch all of the data that comes through NinjaTrader to see what sort of interesting information we can pull out of it. So you can just go into the on market data and the uh, on market depth methods and see the things that come into you and see the information that comes to you. And yes, you can see like a time, but that time is set by the platform. So if you have two people on two different machines, okay, both receiving market data from the same data provider, you will still get different things because you might receive that data at slightly different times, and that can change uh, how cumulative delta will show, or how like with these level the market depth change things. When I'm testing it with somebody else, you'll see them come in different orders. So he says this is nonsense. The data provider. What did he? Where is it? Back. Come back. Come back. Then what is time in sales? All orders have timestamps, even if you have MBP versus market by order. Basically, you don't know, just say so. No, that's not true. Well, that's not true. Mm-mm-mm-mm. Mm-mm-mm. Bum, 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 ba-dum. What was the other comment that we got? Oh, live action. Thank you very much, buddy. His amazing prediction days prior to the 55 low in the Aussie was spot on practically to the tick. His dog is really smart too. Oh, that's great live action. It's really nice to have people that care about things other than just the technicals. I think that the retail trading world just cares only about, they only want to talk about technical analysis because it's like that's all they understand or something. Okay, well, so I'm sorry that I was a little quiet there while I was typing. But we did have a little bit of a pullback, and we're basically back to the news price, the top of the hour. Well, I usually hate taking a trade before the open. Like in this 30 minutes, it can be, oh, well, you know what? Like right now is a place where we can often take trades in the E-mini, but I'm just not seeing enough to make me confident about which way it's going to go. It really just looks way too quiet still. So we may have to wait for the equities open and to see where they're going to go. And then that's going to be driven largely by just day traders putting risk on, and could be random how that turns out. Thinking of what to say to this comment. I think I kind of like got distracted in my own head there. uh,
Uzi Knesset says say nothing, it's easier.
Say nothing, it's easier. I like to cover in the dead space. We got to talk. Otherwise, what's the point? All right. So, anyways, I had gotten distracted from all of that because what we were really going to do is go into see how well our video yesterday did. Analytics.
Uzi Knesset says arguing on the internet is heroin, still trying to quit that addiction myself in some respects.
You know, it's one of those things that you do kind of get a little bit tired of. I personally, especially in this environment as of late, the way that I'll to give you an example. There was a story. What was the argument about? Now I have to look. I'm gonna have to look because that was pertinent.
Uzi Knesset says you wanna screw with your
That's
Facebook friends,
right.
post statuses and just forget about it, let the animals fight in the pit, say nothing to people, drives them nuts lol.
Oh yeah. No, I've totally done that before, Uzi. You just say something and then just let them go on for a couple of days, and then after everybody's said stuff. Also, one of the things that I think is funny is that when people are arguing, they expect you to respond right away. So one of the things that I found is really easy to do, especially when you're talking about the social justice warrior group that are concerned about certain social injustices, is just don't say anything for a while, and they will like I've seen people go like 5 posts in a row, and you can tell that they're just like triggered, and they want you to say something to like um get back into it too quickly and make a mistake.
Uzi Knesset says flips their flapjacks lol.
Yeah, and then you don't say anything, and they just they completely destroy themselves. And then when you come back in, it's pretty easy to just dismantle their argument and dismiss them as a crazy person, because at that point it's pretty obvious to everybody else in the thread. And I've noticed that when I've done that, that the rest of the thread dies. Like nobody else wants to come in and comment on the thread anymore. But no, this one on Reddit was there was a public freakout post where there was a guy standing outside of a BLM rally or something of that nature with a sign that said F BLM, F um, communism, or what's the other group, F Antifa, standing outside of a rally. And so there was some people were confronting him and being verbally abusive, which can be considered
Uzi
assault.
Knesset says there's a higher level of fun you can have with the internet and social media, understanding the engineering and using it against people. Fun and fascinating, lol.
Yeah. Anyways, they tried taking his sign away, and he tried to keep it. And as somebody was really trying to rip it out from him, he punched somebody in the face. Doesn't look like it was a very effective punch, because he was swinging wide out like this instead of generating power from here. So it didn't look like it hurt the other guy too much, but he did throw a punch, protecting his sign. And everybody in the thread was saying, well, he threw the first punch. And what happened after that was then the mob surrounded him, and they threw him on the ground and gave him a pretty good beating on the ground. I was actually surprised when he gets back out, because you would think that after a beating like that he would be all bloody and everything on the ground, but he was actually able to get back up, and yeah, it looked like he was okay. Well, that's assault. He was assaulted. Well, it was assault and battery. And people in the thread don't understand what assault and battery is, and what the differences is, and what the rules are and everything like that. So if you are being battered, you can defend yourself, right? You can defend yourself if you have reasonable reason to believe that you are in danger or your property. And that does apply to property. So there is a law, or there's kind of a general rule that items attached to the person can be considered part of the person, right? So assault is when you make somebody believe that they are in imminent threat of physical harm. So in some instances, you don't even have to touch the person for it to be considered assault. But what they were doing was absolutely assault. But then when you cause physical harm, then it's battery. And yeah, so when they were trying to take his sign, that's assault and battery. And then they took him down. So in that particular case, the law is almost completely on that guy's side. And there was this guy that was trying to argue with it, and he was kind of taking the you could tell that he was like an Antifa extremist. And there's been a lot of stuff going on Reddit lately about disingenuous interaction with people from the other side, and they've basically been encouraging people to have shitty conversations, right? Like they're basically saying, like, don't actually engage in a real actual debate, just call them names and things like that. And the guy tried doing that with me, and I just kind of hit back, because the thing that was so funny about it was that the video that they showed was heavily edited. So they didn't actually show the altercation that led to the main fight. It was just like all of a sudden the main fight was going. Probably so that you couldn't see that the mob started the fight. And when the guy was like trying to argue against what was essentially, my analysis of what the legal laws are, what the law says in these situations, he basically just highlighted more all of the discrepancies about the video and stuff. And I was like, I get what you're trying to do with this whole disingenuous approach to debate, But you're just shooting yourself in the foot because all you did was highlight and turn everybody's attention to all of the stupid things that you did to try and manipulate their opinion. And I thought it was really funny. But man, when you get into going back to the original point, um, when it gets like that, it's not really very fun. And I think that the point is to try and get people to disengage. I mean, I think that a lot of the people on the Donald, now that the people on the Donald don't have somebody to fight against directly because they're not on Reddit anymore, I can see that it's a little bit harder for them to maintain their enthusiasm. It's not as fun for them. But for me, it's like, man, when there's something inaccurate or they're being dishonest about something the way that they portray it, I just can't help it. I'm always going to be there looking insane, and it doesn't matter what they do, how much they try and disincentivize it with verbal abuse or taking away your karma or whatever. That is just my thing. Even when it's not really fun. I just can't help it. Igar pointing out a solid downtick a few minutes ago. Yeah, well, there was a pretty solid one at 06, but then they recovered it again. I think if we wanted to take the treasury short, we could do it at 06, but so far it's holding pretty well, and we're in a range, so I don't know. Well, man, I mean, if you're gonna play the range 06 half, that's probably the best that you can do. But look at the E mini there, taking a little bit of an outside bar and dip down. I don't think that what's happening right now is what the Bulls wanted. I think the Bulls would have wanted good number coming out, open up. Well, I guess we're at 31.67 is an okay place to open up at, but it's kind of interesting to look back at my chart because I'm more interested in what happened in the levels from Tuesday than I am from the levels yesterday. Kind of this spot, 31.69.75. It's kind of an area where they seem to be responding to.
Winston's mom says today is National Sugar Cookie Day, July 9th.
What?
Cookie. Everyone is kneaded out of the same dough but not baked in the same oven. Yiddish proverb.
What? Yiddish proverb. I don't know. I don't really like super sugary things these days. All right, how many views did we get yesterday? 96? That's not bad for a first day. We should come in here and look. Are we getting any search results? Reach.
Luis Alarid says, what are our thoughts on gold and silver accumulation?
Well, I don't really know a whole lot about it on a longer term kind of perspective. Probably this is a place where you could trade the miners or you can just take the ETFs and you would probably be okay. You definitely have to take it long term because the futures are just a total madhouse, right? How many days have we seen lately where they just, there's a huge move up and then the next day it like completely retraces? Yeah. But I don't know. I'm still a little uh I think it's a little bit more complicated than just buy gold, because there's no reason for gold to have to do anything. It's pure speculation. And there's some imbalances in the gold futures right now that could cause a lot of havoc. I would keep an eye on it. Wouldn't be surprised if we see, even though I think that long gold is a pretty good long-term strategy, unless of course the economy really just like we start getting earnings and earnings are great in the third quarter and all of that. Okay, but otherwise, I think that long gold seems like a pretty good longer term strategy. But you're probably going to see some crazy down moves in the meantime, and I based on some the story we highlighted on Zero Hedge yesterday about gold, it sounds like there's some potential for some real havoc over there, depending on how it turns out. You gotta be careful about those stories because oftentimes it doesn't end up being anything like what the analysts think it's going to be, but we probably still should be aware and cautious. Oh man, that just reminds me because I've been doing a lot of browsing through the Reddit and so forth on the day trading, and I'm starting to get to where so like there's like the major YouTube people, um, and I'd say sometimes they post things that I don't necessarily agree with or that I think is just kind of trash, but in general they're okay, and it's mostly just that it's like, hey, stocks, who cares? But there was I'm starting to know now that it's getting to the point where like everybody wants all of the traders want YouTube channels now. And there's a lot of people starting YouTube channels and basically making claims that they're like a trading guru now when they've only been trading for like, you know, 3 months. It's like they've traded for 3 months and they had a good win and now they're a trading guru. And there's one guy, he was going through like, here are the things that I wish I knew when I started. Yeah, like 3 months ago. Okay. And one of them was like, don't mix fundamental analysis and technical analysis. Actually, you know what? Just don't use fundamental analysis at all because people, all of the stories that you get are planted there by other traders and it's useless information. And I'm just like, dude, like, you're so clueless. Okay. First of all, economic numbers matter the most. They don't plant that, right? But second of all, if it's a planted story and it doesn't really matter or whatever, you know what's going on, you can suss that out. And if it's causes a move, it causes a move, and you can go with it anyways, regardless of whether it's a real. But it was so counter to what I'm doing right now and what I've seen from markets, and it was coming from somebody that I thought hasn't really traded for very long, Yeah. How did I get in on that? Yeah, whatever. Bum 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 ba-dum. So it's not really coming up in search results yet. So we'll see. We'll see. I might need to rename the video at some point. Ooh, what was that? A little bit of buy-in there. Now we're coming up on 10 minutes to the open, so. Well, the actual click-through rate isn't too bad either. Utah's top lawmakers are opposed to a statewide mask mandate and say Utahns should voluntarily mask up. Thank you. Just to be clear, I am 100% pro mask, but I am 100% anti mask laws. Okay. In case there was any confusion on that point. So that, 2 years from now, when people want to make a big deal over who wore masks or who didn't, okay, so that you know where my position is, so you can decide if you want to cancel me or not. Dumbfounded by Tesla, Morgan Stanley's Jonas cites power of hope and issues $1,800 price range. Price target range. Jeez. Rand Squawk has a poll about who do you think will win the election. I still think that Donald will win, but that's probably just my own vain hopes. Oh, it's 50-50 right now. Everyone should post free Tibet on all TikTok pages. Cross-platform Tiananmen references also welcome. So you know what? I was looking at that yesterday, and I noticed that there is a Indian competitor, and India has basically banned TikTok, and TikTok was pretty popular in India, so now this competitor is picking up. So I tried it though, but it's not as good. It's not as good. It was all Indian girls dancing. I was like, screw this. This isn't fun. But I hope that a competitor emerges. Hmm. Oh, we should look through our traders here, see if there's anything we missed.
Uzi Knesset says don't resist the Red Dragon. They are the model society for the future. We will all be China one day.
Well, if we're gonna go into this economic war, it really gonna go full bore with this economic war thing. I still think that the American system wins. Jeffrey Gunlock has been tweeting. Let's see here. Per the most recent U.S. Census, over 60 million Americans are Hispanic. That's close to 20% of the total U.S. population and growing rapidly. Talk about an ignored subset of the population in the national debate. That's a good point. That would be something that Donald Trump could probably try to exploit, which would be really weird.
RJ
Right?
Wheel says it's not winning right now.
You think it's not winning right now? I agree. One of the key things is that it seems to me like that the Chinese system really kills innovation. They're stealing all of their innovations from everybody else. What else did Gunlock say? Ignored as a class identity in one way I see as a good thing. Every time I meet a person for the
RJ
first
Wheel
time,
says healthcare system.
I want to see nothing but that person. No background, no skin tone, no gender, this or that, but equal opportunity is key. Whoa, wait. Discovery Trading Group tweets. Not surprising, I suppose, but look what's under construction. The CME is going to have televised MMA events in the ED options pit on weekends to generate additional revenue.
Uzi Knesset says it's not about one system vs the other, it's about shifting the culture to accept the Chinese social structure, centralized power, one-party state, oppressed citizens, one day soon.
That is freaking hilarious. They're turning the euro dollar options pit into an MMA arena to generate additional revenue.
RJ Wheel says I agree, Uzi. That's where we are headed.
Well, the thing that we got to be careful about here in the United States is that we shouldn't allow monetary how do we put it this way? Okay, we've talked about this whole thing about how there's this attempt to get rid of all risk. Right? There's this attempt to get rid of all risk, and people. That's just kind of maybe people's tendency. Humans are afraid. They're more afraid of losing things than they are of not gaining things, if that makes sense. And so it definitely plays into the human psyche. But the risk that we run now is that we will become a centrally managed economy. I mean, look at the economy right now. This is a centrally managed economy. In fact, now that some of the cash inflow has died down, you notice
Uzi Knesset says we will be a centrally managed everything.
Essentially managed everything. You'll notice that the price discovery right now is completely out of whack. People don't know how to actually price something without the Federal Reserve involved anymore, right? Which isn't really pricing things. That's just pricing what the Federal Reserve is going to do and doing essentially what the Federal Reserve wants you to do. It's a centrally managed economy. That's the direction you're going. And if this just continues to the point where the Federal Reserve has to start buying stocks, you know? Yep. And once you got a centrally managed economy, everything's centralized at that point, man. Boom, 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 boom. And then we basically are China. Yep. And then you add on top of that all the people trying to take away your freedom of speech rights. Yep. Oh my gosh.
Uzi Knesset says everything centrally managed down to individual social interactions.
Orwell canceled the question mark journalist says a vile author aided Nazis. Tweet from Zero Hedge. Of course they want to get rid of Orwell because Orwell was the most effective pushback against communism and other extreme ideologies that there ever was. Of course they don't like Orwell. Hmm.
Uzi Knesset says the funniest part is as communism gets more popular here, Nazism will invariably reinvigorate to oppose it.
Well, the funny thing is that then there's this other thing, which is that really, in my view, fascism, as it was practiced by the Nazis, is essentially communism.
R.J. Wheel says the left progressives will mess everything up so bad a strongman movement will emerge to right the ship and the great experiment of 1776 will officially be over.
It's essentially it's communism, but with corporations, right? It's so that the people don't own the means of production, but everything is controlled by the government. And when you look at China, that's what it's become. And that was, I mean, it's funny because the way that they came to it was the same conclusion, right? Hitler basically said, "Oh, communism doesn't work, so let's take the good parts of communism, centrally managing everything, but then, still keep business owners, right? And maybe that'll work."
Uzi Knesset says yes, difference between communism and Nazism is that Nazism genocided in a targeted way, communism did it indiscriminately, that's why communism is socially acceptable today.
And then so then when you look at China, it's the same thing, is that they
Rosa
say
Flores
communism.
says BGFV it is good today.
Communism,
R.J. Wheel
the
says China
Chinese
is
way.
no longer Lenin communism. It's a hybrid of capitalism with severe guardrails.
Right. They said we need to have communism the Chinese way, which means that we need to have free markets and businesses. And so, what is it essentially? It's it's fascism. Really, it's become the same thing, and they came to that point with the same thought that they wanted to have socialism, but they wanted to fix the problems with socialism. But the problem is that it just doesn't work because the entire basis, the basis that the government should control things and that the government is better at doing things than free people making their own decisions is just straight up wrong. And you're going to see that over time. If we continue down this centrally managed everything path, it's going to end in a disaster. And everybody thinks that, okay, it ends in disaster. And then when that happens, then the globalists will take control and institute communism, and that's their end goal. No. You just had a global collapse, like a complete collapse of the entire global economy because of central banks managing their economies too strongly. Does that mean that you should go to communism? No. It means that you should go back to a free market, guys. It's ultimately it's self-defeating. These ideas are self-defeating. Take a long time, but
Luis Alarid says friend left Florida for communist Vietnam, lives on military pension, he loves it cheap.
My understanding is that the way that Vietnam has instituted market reforms is not nearly as, I don't know, managed as the Chinese, but I don't really know a whole lot about that. Nobody seems worried about what the communist Vietnam government is doing right now. Okay, so the Open, also incredibly indecisive at the moment. Anyways, and I mean, the thing that's really difficult about this whole debate is that um, having an instrument that is counter cyclical and having the ability to modify the monetary supply in response to market events is a necessary thing. If you don't have that, then you have really bad recessions, and it's very destructive to people's lives. And that's how we got things like the crash of 1906 and ultimately the Great Depression. But clearly there's limits to it, and I'm thinking that maybe we've gone too far. Well, let's see how this turns out. Maybe the Federal Reserve doesn't need to inject any cash into the economy anymore. Everything kind of runs off, and in the end, we're all just overexcited about nothing. Maybe. But maybe we come out of this and we say, you know what, we need to put some restrictions here. Maybe some laws to prevent the Federal Reserve from doing certain things, right? Like the Federal Reserve shouldn't be able to create their own bond ETF to buy foreign bonds that they want that they weren't allowed to buy because Congress specifically made rules in there to prevent them from buying those kinds of companies. That's pretty fucked up. Okay, so it looks like our first move is going to be short. Pretty decent turn there down. Can't extrapolate very much, if anything at all. Well, you can never really extrapolate anything, can you? It looks like bulls are having a hard time holding it up here, though. I know. I think we should be skeptical about that. Like you always say, never short a dull market. I'd say right now this market is pretty dull. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of news come through. I don't know if there's any reason for it to do anything. Okay. A little bit more extreme of a downturn there. That's 3 pretty solid candles with 2-point down moves. I guess we're gonna go down to the low, which is 31.52. Thomas Howell, you might think that the collapse of communism throughout Eastern Europe would be considered a decisive failure for Marxism. But academic Marxists in America are utterly undaunted. Their paychecks and their tenure are unaffected. Their theories continue to flourish in classrooms. Okay, they're trying to get a little pushback there now. Well, I was a good 5,000 contracts down move. Hmm. Okay, so we got an inside bar down there at the bottom. This one's going to be inside too. Treasuries. And they did move up a little bit. So, too quiet. Financial Times, those under 40 have suffered the biggest economic blow during the pandemic, and furthermore, minority millennials have fallen behind their white peers financially. Walter Bloomberg, Wells Fargo is preparing thousands of job cuts, to start in 2020. I'm going to try a tepid one here. Hmm. Okay. Down tick in the Treasury. Trading floor audio. U.S. finalizing federal contract ban for companies that use Huawei and others. Any company that uses equipment or services from their day-to-day operations from these 5 companies will no longer be able to sell to the U.S. government. Zero Hedge stock slide. U.S. finalizing federal contract ban for companies using products from 5 Chinese tech firms. That seems to be the big story at the moment, and it is negative. I think there's certainly what we were talking about the bear case earlier, and that you would see, earnings revisions, higher coronavirus cases, um, higher unemployment. But then the other facet to the bear case is the growing financial war with China. And I would say that these rules that they're imposing on Chinese tech firms is a pretty good, escalation there. Okay. Apparently, Lululemon is having a major slide. It says stock twits. That interests me. 3150. 3152 is the kind of the key spot, right? Okay.
Kenny Desmond says, Bed Bath & Beyond and Walgreens down on US Open after announcing thousands of job losses.
Oh, really? Why is it all of the sudden, all at once, they're all announcing job losses? So yesterday, my wife was talking, well, we saw it on Twitter. I think we discussed it on stream, but my wife was talking about it with me yesterday that I think it was US West was announcing 35,000 potential job cuts. And she said, because the way that it works is it's kind of based on seniority, who's the first to get furloughed or laid off. And she was saying that like everybody that had been working since like 2012 or something like that, like anybody that had been hired in the last 8 years, like that was how much of their workforce was potentially getting laid off. It was huge. She said, well, we knew that was going to happen. Like her and I have been saying this is what's going to happen for a while. Her airline is a little different because it's a regional airline, and it's interesting, right? Okay, well, I'm going to take my profits there. Because it's still a little early for me to be trying to really, really let something just run, AFP reports France, Macron, and Spain, Sanchez plan to hold bilateral summit in H2. No clue what that means. Seeing the 6J move up a little bit. I don't know. This area, the 3152, I think we could see a bust of it, but then even after they bust that, it could flip again. I'm when kind of hoping that maybe we could get some more news to make the action more clear. Okay. So see, they're threatening it. Yeah. Okay. No. Oh, I'm really surprised. So they went one tick further, but I'm surprised that they didn't tick into below 3152. The treasuries are looking okay here at their highs. I mean, they're holding an okay bid at 07.5. Let's see if they do the level break setup there. 1655, not really. Okay, there's a little bit of a turn there. I think in the end, my little profit taking, I think, was justified there. New York reports 584 new coronavirus cases, only a 0.1% gain. Some White House allies in the economic nationalism camp are fuming today that Biden put out a Buy America push before Trump signed one of his senior aides' own Buy America proposals draft, a draft of which has
Winston's
languished
mom
for
says
months.
the president tweeted prosecutorial misconduct. Perhaps he knows what the court has decided.
Well, I think he's talking about Marissa Bartiromo was talking about something, right? We know what took place. We have already seen criminality. What is happening? Biggest political scandal of our time. Did you see this thing yesterday where they had Mr. Dossier there in court, and he basically admitted that part of the reason for writing it was so that they would have something to contest the election with? Like, what? That was the headline that I read. I don't think that it's probably not the full story there. It seems a little bit too good of a, that's a headline that's too good to check. EU still wants global deal on digital tax to be reached this year. Bunch of people still coming into the, we're going to ban these Chinese companies. Whoa. Crypto lender BlockFi is hiring for a CFO to take the company public as early as the second half of 2021. Meanwhile, Coinbase could go public as early as this year. If Coinbase went public, that would be really interesting. That would be really, really interesting. Okay, still kind of struggling here. I made a pretty good upturn. It would be fair to short it here again. Treasury still sitting at 07.5. Never saw like a level break per se, but aha. They took it at 08. Oh, a good trend is developing now. So something I want to point out is that we're getting a pretty good uptrend here, especially in the bond. So once again, the bond is going up faster, and we're getting really solid looking trend. There's a big old order at 07.5 looking to push them up. So that might, I wouldn't, it can still turn. I don't want to say that like, oh, this is going to continue. But something that was interesting is that the 6J has kind of been doing its own thing for a long time, whereas before it would usually trade pretty closely with what the treasuries were doing. Well, now the treasuries are up and the 6J is up, so that correlation has come through today. Lian Zhao, Oxford University expert, believes COVID-19 may not have originated in China. Okay. U.S. Education Secretary says administration will not cut federal education money, but will allow families to use funds elsewhere if their school refuses to open. Oh, so is that individual schools are going to have the choice? I think my school would open, but I could be wrong. Okay. Well, it's still looking like a good turn back up. Time to come in and look at some internals and so forth. Okay. So the volume is slightly negative. The advance and decliners are definitely negative so far. Sorry, that the tick is mostly negative so far. Like we've had a couple of spikes up and then it comes back down into negative territory very quickly. So we're still kind of bearish, even though it looks like maybe we're turning back up. And then let's look at our volatility. Surprised VIX isn't
Luis
much
Alaric
higher.
says wife still afraid of going back to her teaching job. Her union agrees now. We will see in 2 months.
Downside target is 31.39. $31.95. So when I come back over here and I look at the E-mini and I say 31.39, so 31.40 looks like a really strong target. 31.95
Kevin Wimmer
is the
says, Yo
out there.
Seth, just look at oil today and yesterday and please never talk about it being too volatile lol. Just for fun I opened up
It's
the
been
NQ at the
quiet.
open and it's so insanely fast and jumpy and thin and shit.
No, you're right, Kevin. I come back. I did point out at the very beginning. You look at the past few days, oil has been pretty quiet. I mean, like there was some good uptrend and everything, but now the past few days it's barely been moving 50 cents. And I've seen this before because I remember. So my wife wanted to try trading one time. I actually think she could be like really into it, but she just doesn't really have the life schedule set up in a way in which I think that she could really be very successful in it. Maybe when the kids are gone someday. But one day she went in and I said, "Well, trade oil because oil is something that can move all day." and it just happened to be one of those time periods where it was kind of quiet, and so she was just scalping the range, and she was trading one contract on CL and made $1,000 in a day just trading the range. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you just happened to pick the one thing that just happened to work in the one week of the whole year in oil that would have worked, But
Kevin
this
Wimmer
is the
says
same
like 60
environment.
cents in oil is 15 points in the Amini, and we have that every day. So
Yeah.
right now Amini is more volatile compared to oil. Just lol.
Oh, that might be true. Well, to be honest, Kevin, the E-mini is too volatile for me. Definitely wouldn't be trading it if it wasn't for micro contracts. I mean, that's really the only reason. And if there was well, I don't know. A lot of it is also that the treasury's just not a good trade right now. We've really been in like a 4-tick range this
Luis
whole time.
Alarid says 30 years strong.
Yeah. The move up in the 30-year looks really good, but when you look at it over in the 10-year and you realize that it's moved up 6 points, it's like, oh, whip-de-doo. Okay, so they are getting pretty good recovery here still. Overall, though, like, I don't know, when the sell comes in, it seems so dramatic to me. But then in the end, it kind of ends up being nothing, doesn't it?
Kevin Wimmer says I like the Amini, but I prefer the EU session until US Open. I find the US session to be too jumpy and volatile.
Right. Well, I think the thing is you want to come in. The earlier you can finish, the better. That's one of my kind of like rules. Okay, like the big traders, they make their moves at the open, and then they're done. And the further on you go, the worse the traders are. So if you could come in and say you had said, okay, this news about these restrictions on Chinese companies is bearish, so I want to be short at the open. So you went short at 31.66 and then you took it to 31.56, let's say. You took your 10 points and then you're done, and that would have been great, right? As it is right now, though, I'm still not seeing a really great reason for the market to move a ton. Could come at any moment. We should be keeping an eye out, but this looks like difficult trading.
Luis Alarid says typically done by London close trades are better.
Sure. You're just not going to have as much volume to work with, that's all. So it's something that I find really odd is that we've had such a constrained market this past week, and the VIX hasn't really decreased. In fact, the VIX was lower from the 4th of July than it is now. What is with that? And it actually increased a little bit from the 8th. Like, what the heck?
Kevin Wimmer says I wanted to get long in the Amini after the fast drop. But I expected them to take out EU low, the hit it's spot on.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't count out the possibility of it going short again. I don't really know. We're only just now getting to like the long-term pullback spot where they'll make a little push, maybe 64, it could be a little bit further, and then come back and then fail it and go back down again. I'm wondering if we just take a tracement of this move from the open. That puts us at 3164. No, 3161. Right. So we're basically just toying with 50% right now. U.S. Treasury Secretary Mnuchin speaking on CNBC, Trump administration focused on jobs. U.S. mortgage rates fall to record low 3.03 for 30-year loans. Wow, really? I'm so happy. The market ear asks.
Kevin Wimmer says the funny thing
go
is,
ahead.
put the NQ, Dow and a mini next to each other and check the down move from the open. Nasdaq retraced at an almost new high, S&P nice recovery, and Dow still below 50%
really?
retracement.
Yeah. So I continue to feel that this is driven by speculation. You know what I mean? What would you do if the Nasdaq sold off 2 to 3% from here, asks the marketeer. Well, 2 to 3%? Whoop-de-doo. Okay, so look, they're kind of teasing on the we're going to turn back down again. There's this bid in the Treasury. Is the Treasury giving us a clue here? I'm not so sure about that. Did see a big offer added at 09. I don't know about this one. If the Secretary Mnuchin is on CNBC right now, I'm not so sure that I really want to touch it. So, and Nate Silver, be careful with Alaska polls. The state where polling is hard, and there's a long history of polls teasing at better results for Democrats than they actually wind up with. U.S. Supreme Court decision on Trump tax records due shortly. The Supreme Court is expected to rule on whether Congress and Manhattan District Attorney can see President Donald Trump's taxes and other financial records. If that happens, if that came out and they said that they should be allowed to see it, which I highly doubt, I think Trump is going to win. But if he lost, I think the markets would flip.
Luis Alarid says Kanye birthday party fun times next 4 years.
Is it his birthday? What? Donald Trump Jr. Crazy thought. You know what's going to lead to more bad shootings and that should never happen? Inexperienced cops and lower application standards to fill the void created by those with experience who rightfully wanted to retire and not risk it all due to a thankless job. You did not word that well. Junior, you need to rephrase that. Good point, though.
Gary Rich says if I listened to all the news, I'd need a safe space crying closet rubbing my furry stuffed animals.
Minution, any extension around PPP will be much more targeted. Got a couple of things developing here that could lead to a sweep, so be careful. If you happen to catch that long, I would manage your stops.
Luis Alarid says sounds comforting Rich.
Well, it's just like everything else. Most news is noise, right? We've been in an unusual time period where we've been getting a lot of substantive news, but it's not always like that. Should I keep that there? I'm a little concerned about getting hit and it flipping back up on me. So I put that there hoping to be swept. Maybe that's a little better. Man. Really? Come on. Supreme Court says House can get Trump's financial records. What? What? I don't have to go and read that because I'm surprised. Okay, is it going to come back and stop me out? That's hilarious. I think that's a big deal. The future implications of this, not just from Donald Trump, but like any president now, is, I think, concerning. Well, that sucks that didn't turn out.
Luis Alarid says Trump's niece giving up her uncle.
Whoa. That's an old story. I don't think that there's really a whole lot of there on that story. We'll see what they say, but like one person was already coming in and denied one of the things that they said in there, that somebody else took Donald Trump's SAT or something like that. Okay. Come on. Well, that's incredibly odd. Some dip buying there, I guess. I'm really interested to read this opinion. So it just concerns me that if you're president, Congress can subpoena
Gary Rich
anything
says
about
so what they
you.
find out Trump made millions and paid millions in taxes. Big deal. Just a bunch of
I
crisis
don't
drug
know.
dealers pandering for the junkies. Winston's mom says things you didn't know about alpacas. They hum and ha and orgle. The male alpaca Romeo emits a unique throaty vocalization called orgling. Speculator Seth hums.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that. I remember them making that. Because the thing is that like they can request financial records without any, you know. I don't know. Does that mean that the Republicans could have requested all of this shit from Obama that they never got? You know, like his college records and stuff like that. Like, come on, I don't know. We need to read this because I don't remember a whole lot about what the argument was. I just remember thinking that there's like no way that that the Supreme Court would say that they can get it. What is the decision? If and was it like a 5-4 decision, or how does that work? How does that work?
No county district attorney in our nation's history.
RJ Wheels says I'm no Obama fan, but what would be the basis for his college records?
Yeah, it would have to be an actually illegal thing, wouldn't it? I'm trying to think of a better example. I'm just saying I'm just so with the Clintons. Let's say with the Clintons, right? There are plenty of things that they could have subpoenaed on the Clintons. If they just say, "Oh well, we have a suspicion," and the House requests the records, then they can get it. You know, I don't know. Yeah, this is gonna lead to some. Yeah,
RJ Wheels
markets
says now you're
realizing
talking
now.
there still is. Luis Alarid says 3126 target S. RJ Wheels says Clinton Foundation is a scam.
No, the Senate should start requesting all of these financial records from Hillary Clinton now. Like, otherwise, it's 5-4. Oh no, wait, that's different. 5-4 win for Creek Nation's claim that large swaths of Oklahoma are a reservation for the purposes of the Major Crimes Act, with the 4 liberals joined by Gorsuch.
Graphic Impulse says don't understand why it's such a massive deal. If there is nothing to hide, why spend millions and 4+ years fighting it? I don't care about politics at all, but just seems silly to be upset. Luis Alarid says 30 years spiking.
There probably isn't anything there to it. It's just kind of the so if you let them run over you on this one thing, then they can do whatever they want, right? So you have to fight it. In courts, you should always fight everything as much as you can. That's always the strategy with courts. It would be weird, and I would be concerned if they weren't fighting it. You know what I mean? Okay, let's see here. Not quite yet. It's being remanded to lower court for hearing on other potential issues. Really? Wait. I want out. I think that the headline has been misconstrued. It says not quite yet. It's being remanded to a lower court for a hearing on other potential issues. Well, I got out. Who cares? The reason I want to get short was because of this court
RJ
case. And
Wheels
now
says, but he said no problem, I'll show them after the audit. 5 years ago, July
Yeah.
2015.
Of course. Well, I mean, didn't you remember when he was running, he basically straight up said that he could lie about it and never release them and he would be just fine. And guess what? He was. He knows. And the thing is that you can hide it and then they get it. And unless there's like really something super criminal in there, then they get it and they look bad going through all of this effort to get something and then getting nothing out of it. Just like they did at the beginning of the year when impeachment failed.
RJ Wheels says he truly is Jesse James. Outlaw.
Anyways, okay, so it was a 7-2 vote.
Winston's mom says 7-2 opinion. President is not immune to prosecution. Moving to a lower district court.
Yeah, so what is the lower district court thing? I mean, I think that the decision must be more complicated. Because the thing is I don't think that the president is absolutely immune
Gary
from
Rich says
investigation.
nothing will never come of it. Trump invokes executive privilege. It will appeal back and forth and he will be out of office. Remember Ms. Harry Potter Rachel Maddow looked like a fool when released.
I don't know. Yeah, we already know a lot of what's in his financial records, right? But there was like those records from Deutsche Bank and everything.
Kevin Wimmer says, in our judicial system, the public has a right to every man's evidence. Since the earliest days of the Republic, every man has included the President of the United States, Roberts wrote.
Yeah, so the thing is I agree that the president is not immune from prosecution, and if there's a legitimate subpoena, I'm kind of questioning if the subpoena is legitimate.
Luis Alarid says my calls on TLT and Spy puts up over 20%.
Okay. So, pretty big pullback there. Do you see how I did that?
Gary Rich says Trump cannot be prosecuted for anything he did before taking office. Read the law, dummies.
I don't know if that's true, Gary. At least the Supreme Court seems to disagree with that, right? Okay, hold on, I'm going to pause you guys for a second. There's this huge thing coming in here from China. Whoa. It is useful for the US and China to drop the following 3 lists. Let's show this thread. First is cooperation areas. It should specify all areas, bilateral and global, where China and the U.S. need to and can work together. The longer this list goes, the better. The cooperation on this list should be immune to the impact of other issues. Second is a list of dialogues. It should itemize these issues of differences that should be solved through dialogues. They should be designated to the existing dialogue mechanisms and platforms as soon as possible. Third is a list of issues that need proper management. It should identify the few tough issues that the 2 countries have little chance to agree on in the near future. 2 sides should manage them well in the spirit of seeking common ground while putting aside differences so as to minimize their impact on their harm to the overall U.S.-China relations. Then they start going on a bunch of other things. We have deep sympathies for the American people and their unfortunate experiences and have provided U.S. an enormous amount of badly needed medical supplies. See, now the market ear is tweeting Supreme Court for now blocks House access to Trump records. You see? So, I'm sorry I paused you guys for a second. You start typing your shit in now, and we'll read them after I say this. But I just want to point out the critical thing there was I was expecting a Supreme Court decision to come in. I thought that if, and on the unlikely chance that the headline is bad, that the market will sell. I don't like the way that I executed on it, but I did get a good trade off of it. And then as soon as I started to see information that made me doubt that the headline was actually what I thought it was, I got out immediately. And you can see now that there's been a significant pullback. And now I'm seeing from the market year, the Supreme Court for now blocks House access to Trump records. That is interesting.
Kevin Wimmer says at Gary Rich, so are you telling me Trump could be a serial killer and as long as he murdered before taking office he is immune? If so lol. You Americans and your laws. Gary Rich says kinda but really true.
I don't think that that's true, Gary Rich. And I think I understand where you're getting that from because when we were having the whole impeachment proceedings, one of the arguments that was being made, at least by the Department of Justice, was that we weren't going to actively investigate the president or actively prosecute the president. And that has been like a long standing policy. But I don't think that there's necessarily anything in the Constitution or the law that says that.
Gary Rich says I know what I'm talking about.
So then prove it. Where's the law that states that the president can't be prosecuted for crimes that happened before he entered office? Because the Supreme Court, from what we've seen so far, has literally just said that nobody is immune from prosecution and that if a prosecutor is legitimately subpoenaing records from the president, that they have to provide them. It sounds like that the Supreme Court decision may be more nuanced than we understand. That maybe they said that the grand jury can get the tax returns, but that the House cannot.
Gary Rich says what is the crime he committed? What?
Well, you don't necessarily have to have been proven to have committed a crime in order to subpoena documents, right? The reason that you subpoena documents is because there's a reasonable suspicion and you're building a case. So, and that's where I think maybe the line kind of is delineated is I think that they're saying if there's a grand jury says that there's a reasonable suspicion and that they can grab let me start over. I think what they're saying is that if a prosecutor does a subpoena and the grand jury grants the subpoena, that you have to comply and it doesn't matter if you're the president or not. But that they're also saying that the US Congress can't just request documents because they feel like it. What was Anthony Crudelli saying here? After blowing out accounts, borrowing money to come back, then blowing out again, people were asking me, why don't you just quit? I told them I can't quit because I only saw myself as one thing, and that was always was a trader. If you want this bad enough, always stay positive and never quit.
Brandon Robbins says what website do you use to monitor incoming news?
So if you really want to pay for a news squawk, I think Rand Squawk is probably the best squawk. Today there's going to be a thing from the Financial Juice guys. Oh, that's actually at the top of the hour. So I'm going to quit early, by the way. For that. I think we made, how much did we make off of that? Let's just see here. In the end, $40 up today. I'm happy. So I'm going to quit a little early. But most of this stuff that I'm reading to you guys is just coming off of Twitter and TweetDeck. So. Okay, so now CNN has a story. Let's read it. I will see if we can get some more information.
No County District Attorney in our nation's history.
The Supreme Court on Thursday said President Trump is not immune from the New York subpoena, but the prosecutor will not get the documents now. The New York District Attorney Cyrus Vance had served a subpoena on Trump's longtime accounting firm Marzus USA for his tax returns as part of an investigation into hush money payments to two women with whom the president allegedly had extramarital affairs, pursuant to testimony of Michael Cohen. During Supreme Court oral arguments early May, attorneys asked for temporary presidential immunity against the prosecutor's subpoena. Several of the justices did not seem receptive to Trump's broad claims of immunity, pointing at times to court precedent concerning Presidents Richard Nixon and Bill Clinton that were relied upon by the lower courts that ruled against Donald Trump. Justice Roberts asked a lawyer for Trump about the fact that Clinton versus Jones, the court allowed a private citizen to bring a civil suit against a sitting president. Your focus on the distraction to the president in this case, Roberts told the lawyer for Trump, but he said in the Clinton case, we were not persuaded that the distraction in the case meant that the discovery could not proceed. Sotomayor stressed that the New York attorney Cyrus Vance was not targeting official acts by the president. You are asking for broader immunity than anyone gets, she told the president, Trump's attorney. And when he emphasized that the president is different than an ordinary litigant, Justice Elena Kagan shot back saying the president isn't above the law. But where is that we will not get the documents just yet? That is not in the story. One new update. The House subpoenas for President Trump's financial documents will remain blocked, the Supreme Court said, sending a controversial case back down to the lower court for further review. The vote count was 7-2. The case pitted the president's personal lawyers against House Democrats who say they need records from Trump's longtime accounting firm and two banks. Trump's attorneys argued that the House subpoenas were unprecedented in every sense. A lawyer for the House argued in support of the subpoenas issued by the three committees. Several conservative justices zeroed in on whether the efforts by the Democratic-led House amounted to harassment of Trump. For his part, Chief Justice John Roberts asked the lawyer about the limits of congressional powers and suggested that the House needed to take into consideration the fact that the subpoenas involved not an ordinary litigant, but the president. The liberal justices, meanwhile, pounced on lawyers for Trump, suggesting the court has long upheld the Congress's power to investigate. Yeah, we need a better source about this.
Gary Rich says Trump can rip off all his creditors and force them into bankruptcy, and he can't be prosecuted while in office. After his term, he can be charged. Read the law and Constitution regarding the president.
Nope.
Gary Rich says it's in the discovery phase and subpoena will go back and forth.
On that you can't charge the president. Pretty clear away based off of what we just read that the Supreme Court says you're wrong. And Supreme Court is the final authority on this.
Gary Rich says listen to Mark Levin as one of the foremost expert on constitutional law.
Hey, don't listen.
Gary Rich says you are wrong and an idiot.
Don't blame the messenger. I'm not the Supreme Court. I'm just telling you, Supreme Court says you're wrong. I personally cannot argue with the Supreme Court. I can't. They're the ones that have been, they set up and they dedicate their whole lives to calling these issues and deciding what is right and wrong based off of the Constitution in this instance. And if they say that that's what it is, then as far as I'm concerned, that's what it is. And if you want to argue about it, you should take it up with them. But based off of what we just read, the Supreme Court just said that that's wrong. That the president is not immune from investigation, even from a private citizen. So we need a better source here, though. Because we're still not getting all of the nuance here about this story. Come on. There's got to be. I know that there was this blog that was like super detailed. Maybe SCOTUS blog. Man, disappointed. Okay, here's the CNBC story about it. Okay, split opinions in two cases. Both cases were decided 7-2, with John Roberts authoring the court's opinion and joined in the majority by Ginsburg, Breyer, Sotomayor, Kagan, Kavanaugh, Gorsuch, and then Thomas and Alito were the dissenters. This is the last day. In the lower court hearing in New York, an attorney for the president said that Trump could theoretically be immune from an investigation even if he shot someone on New York's Fifth Avenue. And they're rejecting that, it seems. Still not getting what was the difference with the second case, because they're saying that it rejected the bid by House Democrats 7-2. Is that accurate? Okay, so we're getting Florida coronavirus cases. 4% versus previous 7-day average of 5%. Okay, so that's good. So we were expected that on Thursday, Friday, coronavirus case counts rise and are bad, and it was good. Nah, I don't know what was that last little thrash, but I'm thinking that I can buy it here. Deutsche Bank says will comply with Supreme Court decision. Well, guess not. Let's see here. Donald Trump. The Supreme Court sends case back to lower court arguments to continue. This is all a political prosecution. I won the Mueller witch hunt and others, and now I have to keep fighting a politically corrupt New York. Not fair to this presidency or this administration. All right, well, since we're going lower. No, I don't know if I liked that. What did I say was our target? 31.39. Oh, Seth, what are you doing? Well, it's gonna be funny if it goes down. But what happened there was I just realized that we're close to the target. Courts in the past have given broad deference, but not me. So is the market just reacting to his tweets? Yeah, I could have stayed in that, but I got out because I realized what price we're at. And the president appears to just be tweeting off of his, these stories are all just the same regurgitated bullshit and doesn't actually tell us the full story.
RJ Wheel says the markets seem to think this is bad for Trump. Fundamental
Totally.
assertion.
I don't think it's just bad for Trump. I think it's bad for the country. Like think about it. Now, if Joe Biden is okay, I have a better example. Say Joe Biden becomes president. Every Republican attorney general in the country is going to be trying to get subpoenas on Joe Biden. Like, that's what it's going to turn into. If you can just subpoena for anything you want, if you're in a jurisdiction which is friendly enough to you, you're gonna go and request whatever you want. And the Supreme Court has basically just said that, so you if you have a lower court that's favorable enough to you, you would be able to subpoena anything you want and gum up the executive branch in any way that you want. I'm a little concerned, but the thing is I think that they might have made the right decision that it's supposed to go down back to the lower court. So I think that when the president said, "Oh, I have immunity," the Supreme Court said, "Well, no, you don't." So now they're going to go back to the lower court and they're going to argue over whether or not the subpoena is actually justified, right? That's what it sounds like. Anyways, we hit my volatility target for today. I don't know if this ends up being a trend day. We could certainly go to yesterday's low. I guess now that we're at 36. Oh my gosh, is that all they're going to give? I don't know. The main index is looking a little thick down here. Okay. Okay. Well, so I got what I wanted. The thing was, is I wanted to kind of make up for that bad turn back on me that we had. For a
Gary
second.
Rich says the opinions were made by the liberal side of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court won't rule on this one, they kicked down to lower courts.
I don't know. I don't. Apparently we don't have enough information. Okay, Florida deaths up 120, positivity jumps to 18.4. Yeah, you know what? I was just I you know what? I'm being weird.
Gary Rich says just trust me, I know what I'm speaking about.
I mean, do you have a better source of information? Have you read the opinions? How do you know that? John Solomon says indictment's imminent in Obamagate probe. Anyways, I actually do feel that we could go much lower. In fact, where do I think we can get to? It would not be unreasonable to say 31.
Luis Alarid says 3,126 target near S.
Okay, anyways, I can see there's a target down there, but I feel I can tell that I'm getting weird about it. Can you see that I'm being kind of like FOMO-y? Because I took I took some trades where I kind of canceled it out and then it went and this and that, and I could have held a lot of those. So I think that well, and the thing was
Luis
is that this
Alarid
first
says
one,
check YM.
57, when I took it from 57, there was a good pullback there. That was a great take getting out. And then there was this other one when I went short.
RJ Wheel says Gary has the right idea. The argument has always been a president is too busy to do depots etc. to defend himself. So it's unfair.
Again, Supreme Court disagrees with you. I don't get why we like do you understand that when the Supreme Court
Gary Rich says yes, I listen to experts in constitutional law and read the cases from previous presidents which they state to read.
Nah, that's not what I'm asking. You said the Supreme Court won't rule on this when they kicked it down to lower courts. I'm saying how do you know that? Like we know that it's going down to the lower court, but we're kind of scant on details about that and what is the lower court arguing and this and that. I don't think that we understand that part. That's what I was getting at with that. But do you guys understand that the Supreme Court is the final constitutional authority in the country and that what they say is the law in terms of what the Constitution means? Like, why are you arguing with them about it? Pointless. It's done. That's the way it is now. Now, I bet you that in the future it gets revisited because the Republicans are going to turn around, and if Joe Biden, let's just say that Joe Biden gets elected, Republicans are going to turn around and harass him.
Gary Rich says the Supreme Court won't rule on this because it will open up future presidents to scrutiny.
Yeah. Well, like you said, it would make it so that like the president will spend half of his time defending against all these lawsuits. I get it. But that's where I say that like I think the way that it should work is somebody does a lawsuit or they're doing a criminal investigation into it. And then the judge comes in and he says, well, this is silly. You really don't have enough evidence to prove that the president did anything wrong. And I'm not going to grant you anything. That's the way that it should work. And that's probably the way that this should have gone. But we have this this situation where some courts are incredibly politically motivated, which is a much larger problem, isn't it? Like all this shit with the guy in Hawaii, all those decisions that they made that the Supreme Court
Bio
struck
Trader
down.
Wayne says I think the left might do something blatantly illegal and wrong that some sort of civil war will break out in the cities around election time. I hope I am wrong.
I would let's not make up huge scenarios in our head that we have absolutely no reason or evidence to believe are actually going to happen. You got to realize, I'm not criticizing you, Wayne, but let's just realize that a lot of that is just kind of the way that our brains work, and it's kind of getting overly excited about things, right? Okay, they're still running. So I'm just gonna watch it. Because like I said, I was not happy with the way that I was trading it, even though I made money. So, and like I said, the downside target is 31.12. Okay, so we've got something else here that I want to, if we can, until I really want to see if we can find a better story. If you guys find a better story, let us know. That gives us more details about why the House case was denied, and what is going to be going back to the lower court for litigation, because those are the two things that I don't understand and kind of make me wonder if this story is actually as significant to the markets as the markets thinks that it is at the moment. Okay. And another thing is that while we got some Florida numbers, the Florida numbers they only said what the positivity was. They didn't actually say what the records, like what the new cases count was. And I really hate when you're getting different numbers. The daily positivity jumped from 18.4% from 14.1. That it does sound bad, but
Gary Rich says why don't you Google it yourself? What you want me to hold your hand when you pee?
well, I'm looking everywhere, but every story that I've found on this so far don't give us all the information. They're not fast enough. I think that if I had I'm wondering if I had a paid newspaper like the Financial Times or something, like maybe they would give me better information. You know what I mean? Let's see. Well, let's check. Let's see this political story. Okay, so here's a quote from the actual opinion. President claims this case is different. He believes that he is under investigation and argues that the toll will necessarily be heavier in that circumstance. But the president is not seeking immunity from the diversion occasioned by the prospect of future criminal liability. He concedes that he may be investigated while in office. His objection is instead limited to the additional distraction caused by the subpoena itself. That argument, however, runs up against 200 years of precedent establishing that presidents and their official communications are subject to judicial process. From the opinion. So once again, for those saying that the president is immune to investigation, Supreme Court says that is directly contradicting that. Okay. Okay. So, update 1034 from Politico. The Supreme Court has delivered a split decision on subpoenas for President Donald Trump's tax returns and financial records, unanimously rejecting his broadest claims of absolute immunity in a New York State criminal investigation, but ruling that lower courts did not do enough to scrutinize congressional subpoenas for similar records. The pair of highly anticipated decisions likely mean more delays in court proceedings on both subpoenas, increasing the odds that Trump makes it to the November election without the tax and
Luis
financial
Alarid says took
details.
profits tough closing my 3 accounts trying to get most points options futures stocks few green today.
Increasing the odds that Trump makes it to the November election without the tax and financial details he has long resisted disclosing being turned over to the prosecutors and congressional committees demanding them. Do you see? You buy this. So we played the initial news. Okay, now that we understand more about the impact of these particular decisions, you buy
RJ
it.
Wheel says cuz that can be argued to be politically motivated.
Because none of this is going to impact the election. None of this is going to impact the election. You buy it. Okay, what was that? That might have been coronavirus cases. Don't see it. I'll hold off here. It's time for me to get going, though. You know what? In my opinion, over the long term, if I was a long-term investor, I think you buy this dip. No, I'm dead serious. Because even though the decision played out exactly the way that we thought, and if it's bad for Donald Trump, it's bad for the market and everything else like that. But what I'm learning now is that this is not going to impact the election because these records are not going to come out before November, and there's going to be further litigation on both of them. So I think you buy it. It could be wrong, and definitely for a trade like that, timing it is going to be the key thing. Oh, there they go, lower. And again, 31.12 is kind of the downside target, which is something that we could also see, and the market's going to have momentum and might want to really try hard to get there. So you can see the pullbacks are starting to get pretty extreme. So I'm kind of happy that I stopped trading it when I did. I'm just really sad that I scrapped that 31.42 one and then it went. Okay, so that's all I can really say. I really should get going, huh? You say this goes wrong and go short, then go, then do it. I think you probably still make there's probably still some stuff in it, but let's say where we
Gary
are right
Rich
now.
says Seth says go long, I'm going short.
Where we are at 31.23. Well, let's give the VIX target, okay? If the S&P 500 closes above 31.12, then I'm right. And if it closes the week, and I mean the week on Friday, below 31.12, then I'm wrong. That's the clear case that I'm making here. That's where I can see the balance off of this, just off of like the impulse. And if the fundamentals come in and people realize that this isn't going to affect the election and ergo this move should retrace, then I say we are going to close Friday above 31.12. So I've taken the position, and we'll see what happens. I can be wrong, I could be right. But I gotta go. I will see you guys tomorrow. In the meantime, stay profitable, friends.